Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Jaya Nitai Sachinandana, Nitai Sachinandana, Nitai Sachinandana, Gaura Hari. Jaya Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shinatai Satyananda Dev ki jai. Shri Lakshmi Narasimha Bhagwan ki jai. Sorry. Thank you all for joining us. I'm sure you are all relishing the chanting of the holy name. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. The emperor of all sadhanas for devotees, chanting the holy name, especially doing it together. My name is Jaisacinandana, and I'll be giving the Sunday feast lecture here. Pardon me. So, how many of you is there anyone here for the very first time? If you're together? Oh, separately. Okay, so can you tell me your name? Soumya Radhika Dasi. Where are you from, Mataji? Shri Rukmini Dwarkadish ki jai. You're just visiting through Portland? Nice to see you. Everybody's well there? Everybody's doing well there? Yes. Wonderful. Thank you for coming. Thank you. And Prabhu, your name? Michael. You're here for the first time? Cool. What brought you here? Have you been exposed to the literature, like the Bhagavad Gita? Okay. Okay. Understood. Yeah. It takes time, like anything, but the essence for all spiritual practices is to learn how to love God. That's the essence of all spiritual practices in all parts of the world. So that's what our essential activity is in everything we do. So, and reading scripture is also a manual on how to do that. So, I think what I'm going to speak is straightforward enough that you should be able to follow it, okay? And if there's questions, you can ask afterwards. We can spend time, okay? Thank you very much. Welcome all. Nice to see you. We're entering very auspicious times where there's all these wonderful festivals that occur in our spiritual practice corresponding to the Appearance Day of the Lord. You know, like Christmas is the appearance of Lord Jesus Christ. And so we celebrate that, and we also celebrate it. So today is the Appearance Day of, I think, Srimad Vacharya, and and Friday was the Appearance Day of. But I'm going to speak on something, I think that's timeless instruction of Bhagavad Gita. just so it can be understood by people at all levels. Can you hear me okay? Okay. My patients always tell me that when I speak, when I get into serious things, I kind of start going low in my volume, just because start meditating on what am I saying. So bear with me and let me know, give me a sign. So there's a verse. I'll just recite some prayers. Om Agyantimirandasya Jananjala Shalakaya Chakshurunvitam Yena Smaya Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Amita Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharane Vishesha Shunyavadi Pashtata Deshatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadda Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Michael, these are just like the prayers seeking the blessings of the Lord and those that are dear to Him, so that one can repeat the message of our scriptures accurately. Okay? We're broadcasting through YouTube as well, so that's what's going on. So I'll read the verse and then I'll read the purport. I'd like to do 18.57 and 58 together. Sorry, there's a little bit of an echo going on here, but that's okay. This is Chandrasekhar Prabhu, and he's kindly enabling broadcasts occurring at YouTube. So 57 and 58 go together. It's chapter 18. If somebody finds it in their vinyl book, it's chapter 18. Page number, please. 841? Okay. So those of you that are searching, try to look at 841. And it should be chapter 18, verse 57. Okay, without further ado, Chetasa sarv karmani mai sanyasya mat paraha buddhi yogam pashritya matchita satatam bhava. I'll repeat it again. Chetasa sarv karmani mai sanyasya mat paraha buddhi yogam pashritya matchita satatam bhava. Chaitasa sarv karmani mai sanyasya mat paraha buddhi yogam upashritya matchata satatam bhava. Would anybody like to repeat? Chaitasa sarv karmani mai sanyasya mat paraha buddhi yogam upashritya matchatam satatam bhavam. Thank you. Chetasa sarv karmani mai sanyasya mat para buddhi yogam pashritya matchitta satatam bhavam. Any Matajis? Chetasa sarv karmani mai sanyasa mat paraha buddhi yogam upashrita matchata sadatam bhavam. Okay, thank you very much. Word by word. Chetasa, by intelligence. Sarv, go ahead, you can repeat. Sarva karmani, all kinds of activities. Mai, unto me. Sanyasya, giving up. Matparaha, under my protection. Buddhi yogam, devotional activities. Upashritya, taking shelter of Matchitaha, in consciousness of me, Satatam, 24 hours a day, Bhav, just become. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: in all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. Please repeat. In all activities, just depend upon me and always work under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. Thank you very much. Purport by His Divine Grace. Prabhupada. When one acts in Krishna consciousness, he does not act as the master of the world. Just like a servant, one should act fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. A servant has no individual independence. He acts only on the order of the master. A servant acting on behalf of the Supreme Master is unaffected by profit and loss. He simply discharges his duty faithfully in terms of the order of the Lord. Now one may argue that Arjuna was acting under the personal direction of Sri Krishna, but when Sri Krishna is not present, how should one act? If one acts according to the direction of Krishna in this book, as well as under the guidance of the representative of Krishna, then the result will be the same. The Sanskrit word matparaha is very important in this verse. It indicates that one has no goal in life save and except acting in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. And while working in that way, one should think of Krishna only. I have been appointed to discharge this particular duty by Krishna. While acting in such a way, one naturally has to think of Krishna. This is perfect Krishna consciousness. One should, however, note that after doing something whimsically, he should not offer the result to the Supreme Lord. That sort of duty is not in the devotional service of Krishna consciousness. One should act according to the order of Krishna. One should act according to the order of Krishna. This is a very important point. That order of Krishna comes through disciplic succession from the bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, the spiritual master's order should be taken as the prime duty of life. If one gets a bona fide spiritual master and acts according to his direction, then one's perfection of life in Krishna consciousness is guaranteed. Cetasa sarv karmani mai sanyasya matparaha buddhi yogam pashrita machita satatam bhava. I'm just going to read the next verse. Chandrasekhar Prabhu, would you kindly display 58? And then I'll, for the sake of time, rather than repeating, I'll just read it and then try to connect the two together, okay? Machita sarvdurgani matprasada tarasyasi atachatvam hankara nasharashashi vinankarshashi. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. Purport. A person in full Krishna consciousness is not unduly anxious about executing the duties of his existence. The foolish cannot understand this. Great freedom from all anxiety. For one who acts in Krishna consciousness, Lord Krishna becomes the most intimate friend. He always looks after his friend's comfort and he gives himself to his friend, who is so devotedly engaged, working 24 hours a day to please the Lord. Therefore, no one should be carried away by the false ego of bodily concept of life. One should not falsely think himself independent of the laws of material nature or free to act. He is always under strict material laws. But as soon as he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is liberated, free from the material perplexities. One should note very carefully that one who is not active in Krishna consciousness is losing himself in the material whirlpool, in the ocean of birth and death. no conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done. But a person who acts in Krishna consciousness is free to act because everything is prompted by Krishna from within and confirmed by the spiritual master. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Shai Shunyavadi Pashtataya Deshatare. So the first verse is talking about consciousness and acting in the appropriate consciousness. And then the second verse is talking about the result obtained from acting in such a consciousness. Krishna is very expert in everything, in creation, in relationships, and Krishna is also a very expert teacher, the ultimate teacher, because he knows what's in our heart, and so he's communicating in a way that will transform or adjust Arjun's heart and ours as well. So, it's about correcting weaknesses of heart. So I'll give a quick summary, and then I'll expand on that concept of consciousness, if I may. So verse 1 is, Srila Prabhupada says, one should act under the direction of peace. He said, if Krishna is not present, then how does Arjuna had Krishna present in front of him? So how do we, who don't necessarily have Krishna present to our material eyes in front of us, how do we know what to do? Right? And so he indicates that if one acts according to the direction of Krishna in this book, as well under the guidance of the representative Krishna, then the result will be the same as it was for Arjuna. So this sounds like Guru Sadhu Shastra, right? So one should act under the direction of Guru, that's a Sadhu or Shastra, or spiritual master. And then one should act under the... Oh, sorry, I'm on emergency call. Forgive me. Forgive me. You want to chant Hare Krishna? I've got to respond to this. Just kind of quickly, okay?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you. last one. Usually they're not that fast. So the idea Srila Prabhupada is speaking, I'm sorry, we're usually on emergency duty for 1 week. And so when they paid you, you got to respond. So Srila Prabhupada is talking about Arjuna had Krishna in front of him, so Krishna could give him personal direction, but Krishna is not visible to us materially, so how do we do this? So he indicates one should act under the direction of Guru and under the guidance of Scripture, and not with a personal doership mentality. What is the doership mentality called? False ego, yes, thank you. So Srila Prabhupada describes this many places, this process of understanding from Guru as a mysterious process. In this book called Raja Vidya, he says, to understand Bhagavad Gita, we have to accept the principle of disciplic succession. To understand Bhagavad Gita, we have to accept the principle of disciplic succession. He said, it's not difficult to understand this, because if I want to become an attorney or an engineer or a doctor or a cook, I have to receive that knowledge from authoritative attorneys, doctors, engineers, and cooks and teachers, right? That we cannot have perfect knowledge unless we connect to authoritative source. And so His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was very close to Srila Prabhupada, said something very wonderful that I wrote down. He said, characteristic of the Guru system is the Guru repeats his predecessor's message. That is parampara. But Guru repeats his predecessor Guru's message, which is ultimately understood to be the message of divinity, meaning the Lord. He said this is a channeling process that Srila Prabhupada refers to as the mystery of disciplic succession. The repetition of what one heard from one Guru, who then connected to what they heard from the Guru, so forth, going all the way back to the original Guru, Lord Krishna. And this is true even in material life. You know, whatever occupation I have to learn it from somebody, and they have to learn from somebody, etc. So Srila Prabhupada is saying one should act under the direction of Guru, or those that represent the Guru, and scriptures. The second thing he mentions in that purport is with faith, and he describes that faith means not just a sentiment, but a strong desire to please Lord Krishna rather than a material goal. A consciousness that is much chitta absorbed in Lord Krishna. That before acting, one has to do that. Not after acting, one does that. Before acting. So before acting, start out by considering the instructions of Guru and scriptures. Is this in concordance? And then also act with a principle of faith, a desire to please Krishna. Jaisacinandana Dev ki jai, Lakshmi Narasimha Dev Bhagwan ki jai. And then Srila Prabhupada also puts a second part. He says, continue to be conscious of Lord Krishna, meaning thinking of Him, remembering Him continuously, satatam, even while performing your action. So contemplate, reflect before we do our action. A lot of people in the world will do their action and then offer to God. But that's not what Krishna is saying. He's saying, contemplate, remember my instructions, then act, and then continuously, and act with faith, and then continuously try to remember while you're performing the action. And that have a goal. Oftentimes we're result-oriented, but it should be goal-oriented. Because result-oriented is a material conception. Goal-oriented is acceptable in spiritual life. My goal is to please Lord Krishna in whatever I may do. So that's the essence that I understood. And Lord Krishna says, if you do that, then perfection of life is guaranteed. And then in the second one, it describes the second verse, Machata Sardurgani Mat Prasada Tarasyasi Yata Chattu Mahankara Nashravasya Shivan Kashi. It describes the result of acting in such consciousness and the result of not acting in such consciousness. So I wanted to focus on this principle of consciousness, if I could. What does consciousness mean? You don't have to be perfect in your definition. Yes.
Mental awareness.
Very good. Mental awareness. Good. Others want to add to that? What does consciousness mean? You have ideas? Being aware, yes. Okay, so the Vedic model of consciousness is that there's two types of consciousness. One is called the pure spiritual consciousness, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya. And one is called materially contaminated consciousness. So how can we understand this? Here's an analogy. Water descends from a cloud up in the sky, right? Pure water. Coming down, down, down. That raindrop is pure. When it touches the ground, what happens to the raindrop? Contaminated by dirt or grass or whatever is there, right? So, thus, that originally pure drop of water loses its purity. A very simple example, but actually a very accurate example, right? So when Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna that when a living being comes into contact with matter, that original spiritual consciousness is covered by matter. And so it's reflected in a distorted manner. Like looking at the outside, but looking at, like some of our windows have like this ripply, I forget what it's called, that distortion on the glass, so it's not opaque. So, you can see the outside, but it's all kind of fuzzy. My assessment of reality is distorted, right? So when the living being comes in contact, like the raindrop coming in contact with the ground, the raindrop gets covered with dirt, etc., and we get covered by material consciousness. So the key point here is that material consciousness is nothing but a reflection of the pure consciousness of the spirit soul. Material consciousness is nothing but a reflection of the pure consciousness of the soul. Very profound statement that the Acharyas make. Shri Jiva Goswami says this. So both the soul and the consciousness are non-material, right? There's material and then there's spirit. So Gita scriptures does indicate that spirit has qualities. It's Sat. What does Sat mean? Eternal. Chit, cognition or consciousness. And Ananda. Oh God, what is this? Okay. So matter doesn't have these qualities of Sat, Chit, Ananda. Matter is asat, temporary. And matter, like a body, has no consciousness, right? No cognition. Does this table have cognition or consciousness or awareness as you define it? No. And it may have happiness, but not ananda, meaning everlasting happiness, right? So the question is, the soul is, what is, coming back to what is consciousness? So we distinguish material consciousness from spiritual consciousness. Spiritual consciousness has qualities such as ananda. Material consciousness does not have it. So, I'm sorry, it's hard to keep train of thought when you're getting non-stop messages. So, this is, day to day, 14 hours every day. So the soul is the life force that animates matter. Spirit brings life to matter, right? And Srila Prabhupada describes in chapter 2 that a property of the soul is consciousness. Property of soul is consciousness. He equates it to, for example, you have an electric power plant, and property of the power, symptom of the power plant is electricity is flowing through. And you're at your home, and you turn on the switch, and the light comes on. You turn off the switch, the light goes off. But the property of electricity does not reside within the light bulb, it's from the power plant. Likewise, the soul has this property that radiates out called consciousness, and which animates matter and gives life, meaning gives birth to matter, right? So when the soul leaves the body is called a dead body, because it has no consciousness. Just like matter, I can kind of push on this table, I can pinch the table, won't complain, and a dead body will do likewise. Just like if I turn off the electricity, then that computer will go right off. Correct? So it's like that. So consciousness, like the two Matajis said, is awareness. To be conscious of something, right? Consciousness means I'm conscious of something. And so, on the simplest level, I'm conscious of myself. I am. Right? I am. But the question is, what am I? Right? So, anything that we're aware of, any part of, at any time, is part of our consciousness. So, it's something that is very common and familiar, but it's something that is very mysterious. I did research in neuroscience, so I've studied neuroscience on a scientific basis pretty seriously. But there's nothing that can really explain consciousness, either on a quote-unquote scientific level or in a philosophical level. Many great philosophers have tried, but it's not an easy concept. So we know we are, and we have awareness, like you all said, but what is it exactly is something that's harder for people to define until you go to spiritual or shastric instructions of what is consciousness. So I started out by talking about how there's material consciousness, in that one is aware, one is conscious of one's own body and its interaction with the environment, right? I can feel hot, I can feel pain, I can feel pleasure, I can feel discomfort, etc. So in this material consciousness, which is considered a contaminated consciousness, like that pure raindrop that hits the ground, I am means I'm product of this material world. and I'm the enjoyer. That's contaminated material consciousness. And if you think about it, the entire world lives along this principle. Because material consciousness has two basic characteristics. One is that I'm the creator of everything I see, my family, my job, my work, my success, my failures. And two is that I'm the enjoyer of what I do. So these are characteristics of material contaminated consciousness, right? But actually, it is Lord Krishna, God, who is both the creator and the enjoyer. And the living being is part and parcel of that. Lord. So the living being is neither the creator or the enjoyer. Rather, he or she is the created and the enjoyed. Are you following? Follow? So when we refuse to cooperate with God's desire and rather try to get that independently, we forget our actual pure consciousness, which is a symptom of our pure nature. And that's how one gets contaminated. Because the body, because it's matter, although it can affect our consciousness, it can never alter the soul's eternal pure consciousness. It can cover it, but it can't get rid of it. Is there any proof of that? That the body can cover but cannot get rid of the pure original consciousness? Rebirth. Rebirth is proof of that. If there was no preservation of original consciousness, how could a living being take rebirth? Not possible. Right? Not possible. So and Lord Krishna points that out to Arjuna in chapter 2, verse 13, the Dehino Asmanyatha Dehe, this idea of covering the consciousness. Like an experiment sometimes people will do is they'll pick on somebody in the audience and say, okay, show me who you are, and they'll point to themselves like their clothing, but it's like, who are you really, right? This is a common example. So when you ask somebody, they'll say, oh, I was a child or I was an adult. So the idea is, even though covered by the external matter, the covered consciousness has this idea that the body and mind may change, but there's an enduring I in my awareness, and that's the soul. And that's not an illusion. Illusion is when we identify the I with that which is not I. Illusion is when we identify the I with that which is not the I. So Jiva Goswami in Paramatma Sandarbha asks a very nice question. He says, what is the root cause of the living entities having to experience material existence? What is the root cause of the living entities having to experience material existence? Why does he ask that? He's very, very, very spiritually wise. Is he asking that just to gain knowledge? No. Why is he asking that? Because he's reasoning that if we can fully understand what takes a pure spiritual consciousness and has them experience material contaminated consciousness in identification with matter, then that, if I know why, then I can extract myself from the problem. That's what the commentary to his Anuchada verse in Paramatma Sandarbha is. And the answer, he says, is the one that Chaitanya Charitamrita says. Krishna bhuli se jiva Nadir Bahirmukha, right? That Krishna Bhuli, forgetfulness of Krishna by Say Jiva, is Nadir Bahirmukha, is the aversion to Krishna, attraction by that which is not Krishna, material world. That's the problem. That's why the pure consciousness gets muddied into material consciousness. The translation in Chaitanya Charitamrita is, forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by external feature from time immemorial. What's that attraction to time immemorial called? It's called Bahirmukha, Anadir Bahirmukha, or contaminated consciousness. Therefore, the illusory energy, Maya, gives him or her all kinds of misery in his material existence. So, in response to aversion to Krishna and attraction to that which is not Krishna, the pure consciousness gets a covering of the gross and subtle bodies. They're provided for the soul. Just to allow the soul to function in a foreign land. If I come from India to the US, I need a visa so I can function in the US. Likewise, if one is spiritual and one comes into matter, one needs a visa, and that's the material body. So, the key point here, repeatedly, that Krishna repeats throughout the Gita is that pure consciousness is a direct characteristic of the soul. It is not a product of matter. To understand that I'm not this body means I am this pure spiritual consciousness with chit potency. And in pure consciousness, one is aware of one's relationship with Krishna, using Jiva Goswami's terminology. I have a relationship, meaning I am a spirit soul and I'm part of Krishna and I'm meant to serve the Lord. When you think about those two verses, that's what they're saying. Chaitasa sarvkarmani mai sanyasya matpara buddhi yoga upashita, right? Machita satatam bhava. That's what it's saying. Identify yourself. And a good example of how we should act is the Lord descends, right, to the material world. Just like Jesus Christ came to the material world, Krishna came to the material world. But our spiritual self came to the material world. We had a desire for getting attracted to matter, and so our consciousness got covered by a material body. But Bhagwan, Lord, comes to the material world. But why is his body not material? Because his consciousness is pure spirit, Satchidananda, in the nth degree. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dakshana Prakriti, so chara chara, that the material nature is working under my direction. Under my direction. When he descends into the material universe, his consciousness is not materially affected like ours is. Because if Srila Prabhupada makes a point in that verse, he says, if Krishna was so affected, then he's unqualified to talk about transcendental matters. A prisoner in a jail can't necessarily tell another prisoner how to get out of that jail, right? Doesn't work too well. So since the Supreme, remember I said the two components of contaminated material consciousness are to be the creator and to be the enjoyer. So, but since Krishna is the creator, he's not affected by his creation. Since we're not the creator, we're affected by our identification with creation. So, okay, we understand this. We understand that we're material contaminated consciousness, but originally we're pure spiritual consciousness. Due to identification with matter, our consciousness has become conditioned and contaminated. And because of that, we've acquired a material body, gross and subtle, to function in a material world. You know, a human being who goes into the depths of the ocean needs to have scuba gear, right? Like protective suit and long tube of oxygen. This is the scuba gear for us in the material world, the material body. So, the Lord has a potency called Chit Shakti, knowledge or consciousness, cognizance. So, as we said, when a living being is Krishna Bahirmukha, aversion to Krishna and attraction to matter, then the living being is forced to come to the material world, where we enter into lots of things, distressful experience. So this external energy of the Lord winds up covering up this conscious energy. It's called Bhairanga Shakti. It covers up the Chit Shakti. And as a result, the living being gets material body life after life. In response to the jiva, the living being's desire to be the creator, the enjoyer, averse to Krishna's position, I want to occupy that position, then Krishna's energy provides a suitable covering for such a soul called the material body. And in Bhagavatam it explains that there's actually something even more profound that happens. And what is that something more profound? There's something more profound is that the living being forgets their relationship with God. Not only do we start identifying with matter, we forget our relationship with God, Krishna. And as a result of that, the Bhagavatam says, the Bhagavad Purana, which is our authority in our spiritual practice, it says that we lose all power to experience or even perceive the eternal form of the Lord. So the first setback is we get a material body so that we can be the creator and the enjoyer temporarily and cover our consciousness. But the much deeper disease is that we forget Krishna. We forget God. Who is actually our original shelter. In such a state of being, returning to pure consciousness doesn't even cross our mind. In such a state of being, one can't even contemplate returning to an uncontaminated situation, right? Because Krishna says, Devi asagunamai mama maya, duratya ya ya ya. It's so powerful that it's impossible to escape it, except if Maya mitam tarantate. Right? If one receives the grace of Krishna. Acharyas give a nice example. There's the sun, and the sun is glowing with light, right? But the sky is covered with clouds. Thus far, at least, there's nothing material that can remove the clouds from the atmosphere, right? But what can remove the clouds? The radiance of the sun can remove the cloud and clear up everything, right? Likewise, when we get covered by this Maya Shakti, this illusory propensity, energy of Lord. You know, when we surrender to Him, when we receive His mercy, Lord Krishna can immediately free us. And that's what He's saying in the second verse, that if you become conscious of me, then you can overcome all obstacles in material life. That's how to get over Hridaya Daurabhyam. Become conscious of Krishna. So, since we're so tiny, we're anu. When we're tiny, when a tiny baby is always dependent on their mother, no matter what. And we're like tiny children, and we're always eternally dependent on Lord, no matter what. And the Upanishads say this, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitanam, right? Eko Bhavanam Yo Viditi Kamamam. Nityo Nityanam. Amongst the eternal, there's one eternal. Chaitanas Chaitanam. Amongst all the conscious, there's one pure consciousness. And Eko Bhavanam Vadati Kamana. That one supreme consciousness, that one eternal of all eternals, is taking care of every little jiva. Emphasizing that we're always dependent on God, no matter what situation we may be in. Right? So, therefore, if that's the case, then our consciousness can be brought again to Krishna, the source of consciousness. And how's that? How's that? How's something that's materially contaminated, identifying with matter, and even forgetting the relationship with God, how can that living being come back into pure consciousness? Yes, mercy. But mercy is always there. Surrender. So surrender means what? I give up. That's what in common terms surrender is. But surrender actually means to surrender one's free will to Krishna's desire. That's what surrender really is. Surrender is a sustained quality of exercising our free will to join up with Krishna's pleasure. Because misuse of that free will, right? Krishna bahuli se jiva anadir bahirmukha. Misuse of that free will brought us into material conditioning, material consciousness. So using the analogy, this is all an explanation of Jiva Goswami's comment on Paramatma Sandarbha. If I understand the problem, then reversing it, I will be able to correct the problem. So he says that if I take that same free will and connect it, then that will be the process. We all know that we're engaged in sadhana bhakti, which means the rules and regulations of do this and don't do that, and chant X number of rounds and read this much, and do deity service, etc. But to bring the contaminated consciousness into harmony with the pure consciousness, there has to be the proper exercise of free will, which is called surrender. And that's what Krishna is asking Arjuna. Please become conscious of me before you act, and continuously while you're acting. So what's he saying? He's saying, Arjuna, I'm not going to take away your free will, but you exercise your free will properly. And if you do that, you will overcome all these things. So we have to pray that Krishna, for many, many existences, anadhir. I wasn't always an Intel engineer. I wasn't always married to this person. I didn't always have these kids. That wasn't who I was. I wasn't always in a 65-year-old body, 70-year-old body, or a 5-year-old body, you know. But I've turned my attention away from you, Krishna, deliberately, willfully. And now I choose to turn my consciousness towards you, properly directing myself. So surrender requires determination. It requires exercising one's free will. I'll end with this. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 2, he says, Nasata vidyate bhavo no bhava vidyate sata. Basically, don't invest consciousness on things which are temporary, asat. Rather, invest your consciousness in sat, that which is permanent. So make a conscious choice continuously. And that will allow us to harmonize our desire with Krishna's desire. Jaisacinandana Dev ki jai. When we make that effort repeatedly, that I will put other desires aside and I will try to connect my relationship with you, meaning it's our duty. Like a child is related to their parents, parents are related to each other in a relationship of marriage. Without a relationship, there can be no love. So when we know we have relationship, Hare Krishna, when we know we have relationship, then we can act out of love rather than acting out of duty. So Bhakti Yoga is to learn how to act out of love, not out of duty. When we do this, then we're engaging our intelligence, right? It says, Chaitasa, Srila Prabhupada translated that as spiritual intelligence. When you think, absorbing the mind in Krishna, thinking, feeling, willing for Krishna, and that's Machchata Satatam Bhava. So let's exercise our free will, reignite our relationship with Lord Krishna, and experience spiritual consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Arati has started. We'll have kirtan. Any very quick questions? If you have a more sustained question, we can speak after. Okay. Mancha kalpatribhyasya kripa sindhavyeva cha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If people can pick up, devotees can pick up the mats and kindly stand up and participate in chanting. It's Subhu's birthday today, and he wants to do the service of chanting for the Lord's pleasure. Right, Subhu? Please lead chanting. Thank you very much.
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Bhutale Srimate Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Desatarine Saraswati Deve Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, oh Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Jayo Nitya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Nitya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Jayo Nitya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Nitya Sachinandana. Jayo Nitya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Jayo Nitya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Sachinandana Gaura Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Nitya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Nitya Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Shila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Shila Gurudev, 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 Jaya Shila Gurudev. Jai Vishnupada Paramsa Parivrajacharya Stotrata Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotrata Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Srila Gaurikishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Srila Sachidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Srila Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sadi Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadhara Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. ISKCON Vartmana Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the Sambhuddha Devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to the Sambhuddha Devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to the Sambhuddha Devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlad Hira हिरण्याकाशी पूर्वक्षः हिरण्याकाशी पूर्वक्षः पूर्वक्षः शिलटङ्कानकालाये शिलटङ्कानकालाये ईतो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह ईतो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह यतो यतो यामिता तो नरसिंह यतो यतो यामिता तो नरसिंह बाहिर नरसिंह हृदय नरसिंह नरसिंह हृदय नरसिंह बाहिर नरसिंह हृदय नरसिंह बाहिर हृदय नरसिंह नरसिंह मद शरणं प्रपदे नरसिंह नरसिंह मद शरणं प्रपदे नरसिंह मद तब कर कमल वरे नका अद्भुत श्रृंगार दलिता हिरण्याकशिपु तनभृंगा केशवद्रीता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तब कर कमल नका अद्भुत श्रृंगार दलिता हिरण्याकशिपु तनभृंगा ओ केशवद्रीता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश जय जगदीश हरे तव कर कमलवरेणका अद्भुत श्रृंगार दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनभृंगा केशवद्रीता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तव कर अद्भुत श्रृंगार हिरण्यकशिपु तनभृंगा ओ केशवधृता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवद्रीता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे ओ केशवद्रीता ओ केशवद्रीता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवद्रीता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे ओ केशवद्रीता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, oh Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Gaur Hari, Jaya Gaur Hari, 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 Nitai Sacinandana Gaur Hari, Nitai Sacinandana Gaur Hari, Nitai, Nitai Sacinandana Gaur Hari, Gaur Hari, Jaya Gaur Hari, Nitai Sacinandana Gaur Hari, Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaisacinandana Gaura Hari, Nitai Sacinandana Gaura Hari, Jaya Gaura Hari, Jaya Gaura Hari, 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 Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari bol, Hari bol, Nitai Gaur Hari bol, Hari bol, Nitai Gaur Hari bol, Hari bol, Hari bol, Hari bol, Hari bol. Jaya Narsimha Dev, Narsimha Dev, Narsimha Dev, Jaya Narsimha Dev. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. नरसिम्हदेव भगवान की वत्त श्रीमणि श्री प्रहलाद महाराज की हरिनाम संकीर्तन करने की और प्रेमानंद।
Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. Shri Jaisacinandana Dev ki jai. Shri Lakshmi Narasimha Bhagwan ki jai. Shrimati Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Guru Parampara ki jai. Jagat Guru His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you all for joining.